Okay. All right. Welcome everyone to the House of Life Imperial Embassy. And I believe that this is the beginning of something great in terms of the vision of our Father. We are following our prophetic footprints, isn't it? Understanding that this place is a portal and there are people that have been given that assignment to activate what is supposed to awaken from this place. And I believe our gathering here today is not by guesswork, it's by divine appointment that has brought forth the synchronicity and brought forth the convergence in the realm of time. It's like aspects of formation eventually have brought a convergence, and you realize that some of these things are happening from the groanings from way before you are conceived to the time of being conceived to the time of you being born, and the movement of your spirit in terms of scanning yourself in the place of your location within the Father and the Mother, isn't it? Father and Mother and our elder brother, Yeshua. You've been in a place of scanning and search, and then eventually that gravitational pull eventually has brought us into a place that's called fellowship. Then that fellowship brings us to a place of realization of one another and looking into each other's countenance and having a response that you are my... we are in resonance of the same spirit, and then the same begin to become the gravitational pull that eventually pulls us all together. We have people from the United States here, from Canada, Isaiah from Canada, Jonas and Nadia from Switzerland. Then we have Kenyans. Now from Kenya, we are in Kenya now we're in different nations because tribes are nations also. We are from various scopes of the territory that is called Kenya. Now I know that Apostle Castile is celebrating 6 years of Cave of Mystery. And at the same time, we are celebrating, we're in the week, ours goes for a week, but we're also in our anniversary. We're in our 12th anniversary. We're in our 12th anniversary, which is, we reckon time differently. We're in our 6th year of our calendar, which now we are 6 years, which we call Era Regnum, combined with 6 years Anti-Regnum, how we reckon time. Those are some things that we begin to develop as we go forth, gelling together and such. So, combine that because we came to the realization of how we reckon time in our community after we are 6 years, then now we're in our 6th year. So combined with that at the beginning of ministry, we are accumulating 12 years of ministry, which has Sunday. For us, we do like a week, but it has to be Sunday has to be somewhere. Then it touches some days before and some days after, which have to be informed by the cosmic alignments of the constellations and the planets and such based on the time we started, because that becomes the birthing period of a particular assignment. Now, the visionary of this place, who is Apostle Nelson, for the House of Life Imperial Embassy, has had his groan. When you see this thing coming, begin to take shape, it means there's a groaning that is beginning to become answered. And from that place of that boldness, it took, I believe, boldness. I also look at his age and the determination, and I'm like, okay, really? Then he's here, and then things are beginning to happen. And all of a sudden, also convergence, we see Jonas and Nadia also at the same time here in Kenya. Isaiah has come to Kenya. Nelson's mom also arrived, I believe, yesterday night. And we are here, so it means something is taking off. There's something that is taking off. It's a place where you ought to experience your freedom in the place of your expression in God, that you have to seek out the essence of your divinity. The main thing that we are looking for in this place is people to find their identity in the place of sonship. For him, he's not a Christian, I'm a Christian for some reason. So I'm equally not where he is not. And I am for some particular kinds of face and interface. That is subject for another time. You realize in the place of naming and identification, there's what is called how you go under the radar because of the threats. Maybe some of those things I'll be able to handle a bit of it in the teaching today when we're tackling the issue. I'll also speak of my personal journey. I didn't grow up in the church environment, but it was in the house fellowships. I grew up in the place where we were having house-to-house fellowship. So this time we'll gather at so-and-so's house, next time we'll gather at so-and-so's house. And we were experiencing quite extraordinary moves of the Spirit. So for me, when I was a child, experiencing the angelic presence and such appeared to be something that is normal. I thought everyone experiences that. The environment was very saturated. We used to have daily fellowship in our household. It was a very protected environment in the tenets of God and such. So having that kind of experience of open heaven became something that became normal for us. But when it happened also that we began going to school, peer influence came about. And when peer influence came about, there was the drifting, where, you see, if you have been so much quarantined or zero grace as a child, in the place of obey God, follow God and such, eventually begin to look over the fence. So the desire became to gravitate away, though with the instinctive awareness that I'm a child of God because of where I'm coming from. Our family is quite mixed religions in terms of that, because there's a particular kinds of close cousins and our uncles who are Muslims and such. So one time also I traveled and I went to stay with my uncle for some time who are Muslims, and I loved the way they will do Allahu Akbar, and it's so the presentation of their prayers became attractive. Then I got to a place of a contradiction of what if my bias is, because every single person, when talking with my cousins, they're equally convinced that they are the right religion and such. So I was in a conflicted state, wondering what exactly is this, because everybody appears to be convicted in their niche, and to everyone the other one was the one that was wrong. So I was that conflicted that I didn't want to be wrong and such, and it was something that went on for quite a period of time. But eventually finding my location in Yeshua became now apparent. Who came to answer realities is neither this or that and such. I started having quite some experiences before I recommitted myself again, what people say born again. But my father began preaching a certain gospel. The anointing that came upon him was very strange at that moment when he began speaking about the mandate that Kenya has. I was a child at that time. He started preaching that when I was in primary school. Then he transitioned. My dad passed on when I was in high school, at the peak of that. But in the moment of that, wherever I will go in a place and he will preach, I'm looking at what he's speaking, then I will begin to have heavenly experiences where I could see the throne and the negotiations of who is supposed to be sent. So I began placing, my application. Let me be the one. Let me be the one. So I kept on seeing those kind of things. Let me be the one, let me be the one. But shortly after, there's a man that appeared in the land who started preaching by the streets, who Apostle Nelson knows him, maybe some of you know him also, who was by the name Prophet David Owor. So when we saw him on the street, my father proclaimed and said, this is a man. Actually, there was a station that our television will not get the signal from our home. But one night, my dad says that put on the TV and set it to this station. And we're like, we don't catch that, we don't get that frequency here. But for that period of time, our TV will catch that signal for the first and the last time. And in that program, the person who was being brought was Prophet Owor, was being interviewed by the street, and our dad says, this is the man. Then I realized when I looked at him, I could see actually the response of the very things I've been seeing in the heavenlies. So around the same time, when I was a young child, there's a brother who was our third born that will die and will raise him back to life. He dies, will raise him back to life. He dies, will raise him back to life, until my mom said, the Lord has said, let us release this child. That's how we let him go. But now it happened at that particular point in time now, fast forward at that point when I'm talking, Prophet Owor is showing up in the scene. My sister died that year. that sister, it happened while I was the heathen small boy. I was taken to heaven and shown the child who was in my mother's womb, and I was given the name. We were born, I'm the firstborn in our home. We were born around 7, and we're being born boys, 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 boys. So my parents were seeking for a girl. I think that's the reason as to why the number was huge. So it happened for that moment and an instant, I got to know that the child my mother is expecting is a girl, and I got to know the name. But you know, in the culture, you do not name your siblings. It is your parents that names your siblings. So I had that experience that I didn't share with anyone, but my dad goes when a few days later, my mother puts to bed, and my dad comes home and says, we have received a baby girl, but the Lord has not given us a name. And everybody was shouting their favorite name, but I gave the name that I had in the experience. So my dad didn't respond to any, so he went and he came back and the child was named that name. I didn't tell him I had an experience in heaven. I also shouted the name among my siblings. So the child was named that name, who grew up to be a very perfect and flawless child, but she had sickle cell anemia. So fast forward, when I'm in Form 3, I don't know in America, Form 3, what would be Form 3? High school, is high school there? We have primary school that goes to, that time is going to what is called class 8. These days they've changed, they call it grade 8. Then you go to high school, that was Form 1 to Form 4. Now as on Form 3, my sister passed on. And when my sister passed on, I saw, my dad was we're on holiday tuition back in school for the holiday tuition. I'd just gone back for 4 days. And my dad was supposed to bring me some things at that time. But it happened that day I was feeling so off. And for some reason I'm told you're visited, go to the office. I see my dad's car, but I saw it was a friend of my dad with my dad's car. And immediately I knew either my dad or my sister has passed on. So he lied to me, he said, we have a family function, so I need to take you home, but I knew one of these two people is gone. So he got home, and when he got home, he tells me, your sister passed on and such, and so, yeah, cut a long story short, I walk in, my uncle who's a doctor had embalmed my sister in the house. So I looked at her and then went to sleep. I looked at my watch and climbed on the bed and slept. When I woke up from a very deep sleep. I thought I'd slept for 8 hours. When I thought I'd slept for 8 hours, I looked at my watch again, I realized I've slept for 5 minutes. In those 5 minutes, my entire body was covered with chicken pox. Even my eye pupils was covered with chicken pox, and a voice said, be born again. I said, no, I'm not gonna be. That was in April 2004. I said, I'm not gonna be. I need to enjoy life as a young man first before I commit myself, because there was that perception of the walk with God, how it is and how it is very hard to make it to heaven. So for me, I'd said, I want the day I get born again, I die. I prayed, the day, Lord, I just get born again, let me die. So when I looked at that, first of all, when I knew my sister had died, I knew the God that my father and mother worship, we were going to raise my sister back to life. And that didn't happen. We buried my sister, and there was an attachment between me and her that was really devastating. And there's a pursuit now. Because of the quarantine that we had at home concerning our spiritual life, those were so little, were not much exposed to a lot of information. We never used to have movies. There was no television in our home. That time when we were young, the television I'm talking about came when I was very old. There was no television. The only thing that was there was a radio cassette. Anything that you do secular would be listening to news, then back to cassettes, worship all the time. No movies, no what. So, but it happened that our primary school was the top school in the nation at that time. So people come from all over the nation for their kids to school there, because it was both boarding and primary. So my movie times used to be during break time when I'm listening to the stories. People will tell us the stories of the movies they watch. So we are very keen. So our movie times will be the narration of all the kids who have been watching movies in their homes. So for us, we listen from them and listen to that. Then between those stories, other developing news will come. So a story happens. That time I was 12 years old. we're at break time and they're talking about the war happening in the Middle East, how the Arab Spring are fighting Israel and all those kind of things. Then I jumped to the conversation. I said, no, Israel is not in this world. Now they said, no, Israel is in this world. I said, no, the Israel of the Bible is not in this world. No, they said, no, the Israel of the Bible is in this world. So they brought an atlas and showed me the map of the world, and they showed me this is Israel. So I changed my narrative. Now you can begin to see where I was at. It was like the way I was reading the Bible, there was as if there was another world somewhere that God is using as a template to admonish us, the people of this world. So they really insisted and said that, no, the Israel of the Bible is this Israel on the map. And I was shocked for a moment, got confused. Then the next thing that came to my mind was then this kind of faith that is being preached, there's something totally wrong, because there are particular kinds of abilities that are available for us that we have not seen. And I will have those kinds of episodes of divine invasions. I remember one time I was very good in math and I was rewarded, and then I hid the money somewhere. But someone stole, because in our school there was no canteen, you will not spend. You keep the money at boarding school, then when school closes, when you go and spend at home. So because I'd gotten that reward in the early time of the term, I'd hidden it somewhere in my box where no one will find it. But it came to the closing time of the school, I checked the box where I hid the money was not there. And that was a real blow. So I remember what I did while in the dormitory. I stood and I invoked, this was my invocation. I said, the God that my father and mother worship, show me where my money is. Something came upon me. I walked from the dormitory around over 300 meters, walked into another stream in another class, went to a kid's desk, and I told him, the money you took from my box, I want it. He said, I didn't take any money. I increased my voice. I was shouting, the money you took from my box, I want it. He said, I didn't take any money. I kept on shouting the same statement. So eventually it broke him. So he badged and said, I stole a long time ago. It's already spent. Give me time to sell biscuits and refund you. Then that thing left, and I was wondering, what happened? But I was in that place of pursuit. Now that became the groaning of my heart, where I will not be satisfied by the mundane or religion. Of course, I plugged in also on Prophet War, walked very close to him. Then I began having visitations with God. But if those people know Prophet War, you don't leave him. He's the only one. You see, he's the only one. So one time we were organizing a program with him, so we were part of the protocol welcoming him. So he comes out of the car, he looks me in the eyes and he tells me, the things God is telling you to do, do it or he will injure you. That's how I got my license from Tehran to really obey the call of God. And I went into that rabbit hole. I still had particular kinds of fears and such, but I had to get to a place of self-confrontation with God. I've had those kinds of experiences with God that are quite traumatizing, that transition one from the place of religion. So the place where I was willing to die is the place I met God and told him, no, I think I'm not going to take shit from you. If you want to kill me, you kill me, but I think you're an idiot. If you can't really handle a conversation, I think the way I'm conversing is more than. So that point in time is when he responded. I said, now we can now talk. Now I was waiting for you. We can now talk. So he began when I was in the university, I remember that point in time, he had called me to ministry. I refused and went to university. I said I wanted to be a millionaire by the age of 25. So I went to the university, and he still, even in the disobedience, he still followed me there. I remember there was an angel who visited me and showed me extraordinary things mathematically and science. Some of the things I'll try to pitch to the scientific world, they will say it doesn't work. Later on, years down the line, I've seen the publications concerning those. I remember one of the things, there was this what is called cannabis, and there's an angel sent to me to show me how to alter the signal transduction in cannabis to answer cancer. So when I will speak things like that, the pharmaceuticals, the doctors will say it doesn't apply like that. And then eventually, years down the line, I began seeing the same narrative now becoming public. Then there's other things concerning the realm of energy, medicine, the aspects of like cancer, I was trying to look into aspects of diseases in the various kinds of aspects in the terms of the nature of disease. For instance, when you look for HIV and AIDS, there will be the way information normally comes. It comes in portals. Then you begin to choose. Then eventually you follow a line. So you will say, for instance, like when you study HIV and AIDS, you say the cells are short-lived. They have a short lifespan. So if you can just induce cell impotence, so the cells, those whatever viruses will just die because they are short-lived. But something like cancer that has longevity, you introduce something like, now you begin to think in terms of self-suicide of the cells. You induce self-suicide of the cells and such. So I was like holding those kinds of fronts, because to me God was more of in the realm of understanding that tailors. Myself, at that point in time, I was an engineering student. I was doing mechatronics engineering. At that point in time, that dealt with a lot of robotics and such, all those kind of things. So that became my pursuit in terms of following God, at the same time following the grain and the struggle in the church environment. I was still operating in the church environment. When my dad died, because I started by telling you I was not in church, we didn't grow up in church. When my dad died, so eventually we came from school, found mom going to church, then we followed her to church, and then eventually began like expressing our aspects of spirituality in those places. There was particular kinds of breakthroughs in God that I had that normally you will not find a mentor to mentor you in. I remember there will be times that I will know panoramically everything in the details of what will happen in the entire day. The entire day will play, I'll know where I'll be going, there's these kinds of gunshots and such, everything that will play. I will know even where I'll stumble on a rock. So that became the kind of life. But it came to a point in time that if I will come from the place of prayer, I will not know what is happening. I'll walk out and nobody will stand that ground. Everybody will be fleeing. So that thing offended me. I told God, now you're embarrassing me. Shut this thing down. I didn't know. The dream dimension at a particular point in time got angry. And told God to shut. And for a long period of time, that dimension totally shut. It became a lot of negotiations. I remember one time, the father came, that was in the year 2006, and he came and I said, Lord, I'm becoming socially misfit. I'll one day need to marry a woman who is a human being who cannot understand these ways. I'm totally misfit socially. Then one time in a visitation, I was alone in the house. He comes, and the first time this is what I called, by that time I used to, the name we'll use is Jehovah, but I say Jehovah desperate. I saw the desperateness of God when he comes, and he came and said, I seek people who walk this kind of path, and if it means it is a wife that you need, I can create for you one that has neither father nor mother, but please walk this walk that you're walking. That thing shook me to the core, and I was like, what exactly is happening here? It came with the aspects in terms of balancing the aspects of the terror and such, but eventually having inroads into breakthroughs. I've had my own personal kinds of fights, dealing with your own oneself in terms of the soul. I thank God for ministry, because ministry really leads in the place of character development. I normally say ministry has drained anointing from me more. You see, actually, I can tell you, I'm more powerful now than I was before. But if you meet, I remember there's one time that I blocked some people from Facebook because they came and they saw me, they began telling people, because they followed the conversation, they say, this guy is a God, we know him, and you people don't know. You don't know this guy. So I was trying to shut that, because those days will be, anything that happens, we demonstrate their life. And we used to deploy even power to, we used to utilize Holy Ghost as assassin too. So if you insult me, you meet your karma there live. And then you're crying, you say, oh, God, forgive me. I tell you, no, don't repent to God, repent to me. Like those things. So I used to have those kinds of plays. Calling rain to come, manifesting stuff, repairing. I remember one time my phone had burnt, and my mom had bought me, I'd spent a lot of money. Actually, she had saved money to buy me that phone. And I connected it with just cables and such, and then it got burnt. When my mom was angry, I went and said, now phone, listen to me. This is Wesonga, and I cannot fight with my mom now. Come on. The phone came back on. So, So it was those kinds of extremes of the deployment of power and such. But eventually managed to lead me the ministry path, I began seeing a lot of things in terms of how it's layered. I remember one time having an experience, a throne room experience now. In that throne room experience, there's a few of them that maybe I'll share. I'm laying a foundation, maybe someone resonates with that testimony, so that, because I know this is supposed to be a portal where we fast track a lot of things, so that I'm thinking like, if there was an avenue where these things are not suppressed, what exactly would have been the build up this far? If it was the community of people that talk the same language, what exactly would be the build up, and what would be able to be able to deploy so far into the world and the space of its function? That's why I'm utilizing the testimony to lay up a foundation, so that we understand that we have an expectation of the things that will begin to develop from this House of Life Imperial Embassy. I believe when the visionary speaks, he will begin to show you how is about the openness to all. There's no limitation, or the aspect that he talks about is not a place of culture, it's not a religion, or it's not but every person from their own kinds of background need to find their spiritual expression from this portal. Now let me first of all cut my story short. I'll have gone more and more, but I believe that gives you a taste. Whenever there's this gravitational pull that pulls people in the place of fellowship and resonation, I want to plant you, look at there's where we are coming and how we are feeling and how we are rejoicing in God. Oh, so-and-so is supporting me, so-and-so is working together with me, so-and-so is fellowshipping together with me, so-and-so is for us, so-and-so is against us. All those kind of things are the normalcy of whenever spiritual people come together. But the challenge that I want to pose to you today is, there's a total difference between when the mentally ascend into a particular place of perception in the realm of God, and the requirement, the great assignment that we have is to really embody that dimension. I normally tell people, when we're allowed to speak boastfully in terms of who we are in God, I normally tell people, the originality of my spirit is not functional, because it becomes destructive. I've not yet built the full infrastructure to harness that, because if it comes in fullness, it will become terribly destructive, because the magnitude, people talk about God being good, and I tell people there's nothing good about God. Nadia. Are you okay with that? I'll show you why there's nothing good about God. If God was good, every time you will ask him, he will show up. But majority of the things you're seeking God, he is so veiled, because if he shows up, it may be distraction to you. So it means you must match up to a particular kind of stature for him to come. Because he doesn't come because you say, Lord, come. He might come and it may be to your distraction. Isn't it? So that's why I normally tell people, there's nothing good about God. You see, it's you to make good of him by that which you become. And the greatest challenge is for us to respond and really ascend into that ladder until we're able to come of stature to look him face to face and to resonate in the very language of what he is. Speak like him, look like him, function like him. We have already the seed within us. It's already permitted to express. Religion suppresses it. Religion redirects it. Religion or perceptions limit it. But question is, will you permit yourself to really open up in that place where the fullness of divinity dwells? And let me tell you this, the fullness of divinity operating in you is not limited, it's not about we are fully divine by different aspects. No, each person is the fullness of the Godhead. Isn't it? Or I can put it in a worse place if we are ready. I believe some of you are Nelson's students. Nelson speaks plainly, I hide a lot of times. But I utilize because I've heard how he teaches. So I know his students can handle. Mine, I know they can handle. You will realize a lot of the times the God that the world worships, or the gods that the world worships, are the gods that are supposed to worship them. We worship that which ought to worship us. And I will quantify it. I'll go biblical. I'll go first of all to the scriptures. When you hear man being created, it says, Elohim said, let us make man in our own image after our likeness. Elohim is a collective of the pantheon. So if the entirety of the pantheon came, each person of the pantheon came, and they created an entity that emerges, whether there are 72 in the pantheon, and they create one entity that emerges, one entity is one, but 72 pockets. So you created something that is superior to you. Because each essence, this person that emerges, understands the 72 of you, but the 72 of you are disagreeable. You identify according to your own self. I am. Then you want to control, because you are the one who created it, isn't it? You want to colonize this creation of yours according to your individuality without considering the entire group that participated together in formation. Are you together at that point? That now becomes the crisis. When you speak about the fallenness, the whatever, has nothing to do with fallenness. It is everything to do with the discordance of the pantheon, and humanity is the only one that has been given rise to harmonize the entire pantheon from within. Then eventually the peace of Christ now can cover. Now it means you can make peace between this Elohim. Is Elohim in single? Which one? How do you say it?
I think it's Elohi.
Elohi. So Elohi, please be patient. I want you to understand. I'm not only you. I am you, I'm you, I am you, I'm you. So I can understand all of you. And if you cannot listen to me, you cannot sit on the table. Every one of you want to colonize me, yet I am not you individually. But you see, the same spirit is the one that eventually now calibrates. Eventually, each entity wants to colonize humanity. And if they can balkanize you, then they come, they colonize you, then they change even your skin color. Say, you are my race. You're my tribe. So every tribe, every race, there's a God that sits upon them. So you see, unless if your worship of God is maybe, there are particular people who they cannot go beyond their race. There are people who believe their race is the called ones. Yeah, even here there's some particular Africans somewhere in a river, they believe that. Even here we meet them here, they believe somewhere in a bush, they believe they're the only ones, a tribe. Here in Kenya. So everybody believes everywhere, they believe they're the only one. And this God has convinced them. They have told you, worship me only. Anyone that goes after any other gods, this God terrorizes them and colonizes them and gives them a culture according to himself. And they believe that they're the only chosen ones. And they live groaning and mourning concerning the other ones. So technically it means, if you have not met the sovereign God, it means if you meet the sovereign God, you punch through beyond your race, your tribe, your culture, and it means the God that was trying to dominate over you begins to come under you. Now, eventually, at this point in time, you are now mature to meet the sovereign one, the Most High, the Elyon, the sovereign one that rules in the council of gods. He whom the gods bow down to, you come in as the sons of the Most High. That is the conflict and the movement that is happening within humanity. Scriptures put it there and says, creation is groaning, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. When you speak about creation, it's not about the earth. Creation means including angelic realms, including the entire heaven. Anything that is called creation in heaven, on earth, the para realm, every dimension that you can think of, each one of them is groaning, and they say the answer is upon the awakening of what is called the sons of God. Apostle Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 3, that one of my favorite scriptures, he says, Ephesians chapter 3 verse 10, he says this, he says that to the intent, it starts from verse 8, it says that, me who am the least of all the saints, is this gospel given that I preach among the Gentiles, the unsearchable riches of Christ. Then he says, and to show all, and to make all men see what is the mystery of the fellowship that is hidden in God before the foundations of the world. First of all, he has obliterated the entire Bible. Because he says these things are hidden from the foundation of the world. They have no records. It means they are secrets. Isn't it? Then he says, me who am the least of all, I've been given this grace to search out. You realize Paul is different from all the disciples. The other disciples, their mandate, he says, they are to witness about Jesus. So for them, they're preserving evidence. Surely he died and rose again. And their mandate stops at that. So their argument in terms of preaching the gospel is to just affirm that Jesus Christ died, rose from the dead. They have nothing else to say. They say he's been given, so everything else they narrate around it. He's been given rulership over what? He's coming to judge the living and the dead. He that left is going to come back again. It ends there. Paul says, I've been given to such mysteries that are hidden from the foundation of the world. And you realize the disciples of Jesus had a conflict even with Paul. Because the things he carried were beyond the scope of their access. But now these things are written for us in this sense to tell you that there's no point of arrival to say this person's revelation is the ultimate or the crowning or the fuller knowledge. Paul himself, in the end of it, he says that I may know Christ. He's the one who has written 2/3 of the New Testament. Then he says that I may know Christ. He's still seeking a place that he has not yet attained unto. So in other words, he tells you, you cannot say Paul is the limit. Do you get that? Now, this entire thing is being edges that come, everybody attempts. When they fail, they throw it to the next generation, or they leave it in the place of what is called the groan state. It remains in groaning. Then they wait for someone to come, including the Messiah. You realize David attempted the Messiahship. He really channeled the Messiah in the first person. You see, most of the things that Jesus speaks about, you realize is David speaking in the first person. Where he says, he shall not leave my soul in hell. Isn't it? About the resurrection of the Christ or whatever. David is speaking in the first person. When he speaks of being beset by the bulls of Bashan, he goes to the concept of the cross in his own personal experience. He says, David is the one that says, in the volumes of books is written about me, I come to do your will, O God. But the same things you see, Christ comes and reiterates the same statement. So David will embody this, then eventually he will plug it, expecting that someone else will come and crack the code and answer his groaning. But he gave a shot at it. So whenever generations come, God, the empire, allows you to have your personal experience in terms of the pocket of what you will harvest. Will you be worn out? Will you be able to be outwitted? Will you outwit? Will you be able to really manifest? And the same question now lands upon us. I'm not necessarily excited about what we feel we have received in God. I'm not necessarily excited because history shows everyone came, they believed that they got it, they attempted it, and they passed it on. But I'm equally excited in my own ego. I say, no, this thing, we must crack it. It must, you see. So I'm not necessarily excited because it's an attempt, but I'm equally excited in terms of like, I will challenge the intelligence that is involved until we're able to really now open this vault. When you open this vault, the fullness of God now begins to find expression. It begins to find expression in every individual. It finds expression in what form, or it finds expression in what way? I was saying that right now we are in this junction, having a human experience and talking about formations, talking about we are mystics. Well, of what order? We are mystics coming together and such. But I want you to stand in this point in time, look into 1 million years to come, then look back. When you launch yourself 1 million years to come, then look back in this moment, the narrative of our individuation begins to change. Now listen to this. When you're coming 1 million years from now, the narrative that's being talked about us right now is a pantheonosis. It begins to become a myth in that hour concerning a group of gods that existed. So your character begins to show up in that narrative. They say there was a god called Isaiah Chilean. I hope I'm pronouncing your name well. That maybe in this point in time you may be saying, oh, Isaiah just struggling in trusting people and such, isn't it? So he's a bit cautious. At that hour in time, the story being told, there was a god called Isaiah who was terrified of anyone rising. So he will make sure he suppresses and kills anyone that tries to rise. But in this hour, you're talking about a story of you're dealing with your own soul. You see, In this hour, maybe as Apostle Wesonga, I'm dealing with, I don't want people that I'm raising to overturn me in ministry. I'm just managing ministry. In that hour, they say, this guy was the main God here, but he was terrified of anyone rising above him. So he made sure to make control of his territory, he made sure no other God breaks through into revelation, for he feared the light that was in the other gods. Yet at this point in time, I'm just realizing, I'm just talking about my story. People, ministers face issues. You see people in church, they overturn you, they take the resources of the church. That's the stories, isn't it? Or even tell testimonies. So you see the other pastor, the way it was done, things that were done to him. I can't allow this thing to be done to me. We're just managing situation. But the years to come, that story paints differently. Isn't it? When you're having husband and wife things, they say the goddess. They talk about the story of the god and the goddess. Isn't it? What they were doing. So you realize, question is, plunge yourself that 1 million years to come and look back and see exactly how is your story taking shape. Because from that 1 million years looking back is when we will tell whether these kinds of formation will be put there as another story of a pantheonosis, and then it'll be like they attempted. Then other kinds of categories eventually began to emerge. Are we together? It takes resilience. It takes, I don't know, so that I may not go so much. There's still time, huh? I can talk a bit more. I was rushing. It takes resilience. That's when we talk about we're not doing religion. Religion can have formalities without necessarily any transformation into your deification. Religion, we may be 10 years doing this, yet we may have developed in terms of infrastructure, we may have developed in terms of outreach, we may develop in terms of numbers, we may develop in terms of properties you've acquired, we may have developed in terms of which centers have opened up, but in character, you may still be remaining the same. And that's where the trap is. That's where the trap is. You would rather forsake this, but make sure that within the 10 years, you've scaled heights. In terms of stamina, stature, you are tending towards equality. He says this, a child, though he is the heir, he differs nothing from a servant, but is kept under tutors. And he says we are heirs of God and joint heirs with Christ. And normally I pose this question to saints. I pose this question and I say, who exactly is an heir? And I normally receive this kind of response. An heir is a person that inherits the estate, inherits the property. And I'm like, no, an heir that is looking to inherit the estate and the property is a foolish heir. Actually, an heir that seeks to inherit his father's stuff, the heart of the father turns against them because you're waiting for when the father will die. The concept concerning an heir, the principle concerning an heir will be this, that you are coming into a state, you're not inheriting stuff, you're inheriting status. You're inheriting status to occupy the pocket of where your parent is so that you become that parent, and it's like you give relevance to your parent to relive within you, though they are gone, but there is like they reincarnate within you, they vicariously live within you, and their essence continues. Actually, that's the essence even as to the concept of concerning people naming, like in the African culture, we find people they're naming after their grandparents, and people will argue. The question about renaming people that are gone would be more of like, that person actually needs to return and live within your body. The concept concerning naming is, the spiritual mystery of naming is an occultic concept, is an occult principle. Naming is tying a spirit to a body. The purpose of naming was like pulling a spirit from the spiritual realm to tailor it into this physical form. So naming was a conjuration, to conjure a spirit, to make it manifest. So names are not just the way we name these days. Names were drawing of spirits, localizing them into embodiment. So inheritance or being heirs means the person you are heir to must come to a point where they cease to exist and you exist. That their existence is not about they existed and you exist, but their existence has been dissolved within your existence. They are totally forgotten into you. So, question is, if truly we are heirs of God, where is the point of arrival of the saints? The point of arrival of the saints is when you occupy the status of who God is, that He ceases to be and dissolves totally within you and disappears. So there will be no looking here and say, God is this and I am. There will be no God and I, but that which is God, I am. That's what's called heirs, being heirs of God. The same way that he speaks about Christ, he said joint heirs with Christ means in the equivalence. Joint heir is not about 50-50%. Joint heir means each one has 100%. 100% means he does not own anything without me. And 100% means you are in the same state. If that is true, then the mathematical equation applies. It says, Father, glorify me with the glory that I had with you before the foundation of the world. Then he says, I in you, and you in me, and I in them, that we may be one, that they may be one as we are one. When you do that equation and balance it, it begins to relegate to you that you have equally the same assignment to come to the stature where you are equivalent with God. The same glory in Him ought to be the same glory within you. Other places says that believers, Christians normally have trouble with when people claiming equality with God. Yeshua, when He walked the earth, He answered for you what you call the gaps. Whether you talk about omniscience, omnipresence, or whatever, whether he was tired, he slept. And He said, my Father and I are one. He was afraid of some people sometimes. He hid. He ate. He traveled by foot or by whatever was available in those days. So sometimes people mock you and tell you, if you are the Son of God, do this. Why will Jesus not pull a Range Rover 2,000 years ago? He is God, isn't it? Why will He not pull a Range Rover? Why was He going on donkey backs? Yet, in His confession, He is steadfast and says, the Father and I are one. And any person, actually the accusation that was upon him is when he says that God is his Father. They accused him because to the understanding of the Jews is that if you say God is your Father, you being man, you're making yourself equal with God. But he said by the same Spirit we cry, Abba, Father. So it means calling God Father is by the revelation of the awakening of the Spirit. That you have the confidence to call Him Father, hence you're making yourself, being man, equal with God. Then, but also he says this, let this mind be in you, which also is in Christ, that Him being man thought it not robbery to be equal. So question is telling you, which mind should it be in you? That you being man, think it not robbery to be equal with God. Unless we fix the mind, you cannot draw that edifice. The edifice, the mind that you have controls the spirit realm. If you want to see the invasion of the empire into this natural world, the reason as to why we are speaking, we're not speaking to you in every other interface. We're speaking to you in engaging your mind dimension. Every word that we speak touches first of all your mind, then eventually begins to translate into virtues, whatever in the spirit, eventually recalibration, then eventually your mind changes, it begins to draw that edifice that begins to descend. So we ought to begin to see how far is the empire descending by the degree of the expanse to which our mind is unlocking and we are housing Him. We are housing Him and making peace in the discordant dimension. So it means we have challenge in terms of being ambassadors of peace or ambassadors of, and you find those kind of things even in your natural interactions. In your natural interactions, you may think what you're dealing with is the conflict between you and other people, but what you're dealing with is the test to prove if you can harmonize discordance. The gospel that we've been given is not the responsibility of the kingdom to influence the gospel, it's our responsibility to influence the gospel. Allow me, I told you I'm a Christian, isn't it? So allow me, I'll touch some things concerning that. How comes Christianity that is 2,000 years old, Islam that is 600 years younger, is making inroads into the world in magnitudes that Christianity has not seen. Tell me any Christian nation. I'll tell you there's zero Christian nation in this world, but I can show you Islamic nations. They're Islamic to the soil. I remember, I think when you're going to Pakistan, before the plane took off, is Allahu Akbar to be pronounced. Including the pilot, Allahu Akbar, whatever. All that. I went, that was the time I was going to Pakistan. The first time I passed Abu Dhabi, and I think it was during those pilgrimage times, and I was traumatized. I was almost traumatized. Everything was Islam to the soil. It is the culture, it is the ideologies, it is the perception. When somebody is doing business, they have been indoctrinated. Everything they are doing, the Islamic agenda comes first. The Islamic agenda comes first to the degree that they have no problem swindling. I don't know if the other time they use what is called kafir. Kafir means they're non-believers. The non-Muslims, they're called kafir. So if it comes to a kafir, you are permitted to swindle them, even if you're supposed to be ethical in terms of character. But when it comes to a kafir, for you to foster the Islamic agenda, you are permitted to swindle them. Strategic, planning, foresight. These are the ones they say this world is not our home. We wait and see. They're looking for a city whose maker and builder is God. There's a guy who said, I'm looking for a city whose maker and builder is God. The same God looked at him and said, this foolishness, I will take your generation into captivity. They must learn the art and the craft of fixing problems. Are we together? There's nothing that's going to be handed over to you. There's nothing. This world is a brutal world. You must be brutal. You must approach it with brutality. You must mature, get it. Solomon speaks in this wise and says, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search out. It means the primary objective of God is to mislead you. So it means if you depend on God, if it is his glory to conceal, in other words, he tells you, if you seek him, he will mislead you. You must find how to catch him. But in there you catch him, now he brings you to the same measure. And it's not in vain. When he says it's the glory of God to conceal, it's not about vain. It is about exercising you, because he knows he has put within you the resource that is of the God kind. And that resource must be exercised. He's not going to crown puppets. He's not going to enthrone our people into an empire by grace or by mercy. Christians normally shout and say, don't you know we shall judge angels? And I'm like, stop that foolishness. So you think God will give you power by the mercy of God, sit here and judge angels. I'm gracious to you, sit here and judge angels. Do you know what an angel is? When he says the saints will judge angels, it means you have to come to a place of maturation in the degree that the composite development of your being supersedes what an angel is. When an angel appears before you, you know that angel more than he knows himself. That's how judgment is given to you. So it means your judgment will be just upon an angel. It means when an angel appears before you, you know that angel more than he knows himself. You're not going to judge angels by this thing you are seeing in Christianity of hallelujah, God is good, by the mercies of God. You think by the mercies of God you will judge angels? By his grace of being unworthy before him, but he has chosen me today to sit on the judgment seat and angels to appear before me.
Angels that I'm so scared of.
Angels whom you are scared of, when they show up, you fall down and say, oh, I'm unworthy before you. Then you say you sit and judge these angels? Let's talk. We say it's written in scriptures. The people love quoting, isn't it? So they are quoting things without assimilation. Because if you're going to judge angels, it means the development of your stature. When you're sent to judge, judgment is left to you. You're not being supervised to judge. It means you're of stature. You'll appear for my sake and you'll judge. And I know your judgment is right. How will you judge something you know not of? Oh, brothers and sisters, be wary of the schemes of Satan. You're supposed to be wary of someone that is junior to you. Don't open portals, demons will come. You are a son, but there are particular jurisdiction you're not supposed to walk into. Of a junior guy. Let's talk. You're of the God kind. You're of the God class. Someone who's of the angelic class. He has no place. There's no hope for him to ever attain into Godhood. It doesn't matter whether resources are supplied. He does not have the inbuilt capacity to house the absolute God. You as a human being, you've been given power to house the absolute God, yet you're chasing around a guy and saying, we need to, guys, you realize this thing about Satan, the way it's being preached, is denying you sonship. Because there's no single place a son can be in a place and they're saying about the particular kinds of spiritual realms you're not supposed to walk into. And that's why even to today, a believer goes to hell and the experience is different. But at the same time, the same guys, they walk into hell with Yeshua. You realize, let me tell you, these people that go to hell, whenever they preach to you, understand they're preaching to you an antichrist spirit. Because look at the Yeshua they walked with into hell and them. And they'll be coming to tell you, make sure you don't go to hell. Isn't it? They said that I went into hell, it was traumatic, I was crying, the fire and brimstone, I could not breathe. Yet Yeshua was there, people in hell were crying to him. Yeshua was there comfortably, just walking in hell. You say it is Yeshua who took you there, but you're seeing discordant things. So you realize in the place of sonship, there's nothing like hell or heaven. Heaven and hell does not make sense to you. Because it's not about hell or heaven, it's about who you are. Who you are, whether you're in hell, it doesn't matter. Because you're the master of even, you see, even hell itself is not, anyway, I'll speak from the Christian aspect. I don't want to go extra. But hell itself is not even the creation of Satan. Yeah. Satan himself is a tenant. Yeah. So if you are a true son, it means you ought to come to a place where you can open hell and say, today is my day to study hell. So hell is your laboratory. So you say, oh, now I understand why sulfur and brimstone. Then you map sulfur and brimstone concerning the what's called sin. So it's not even about being taken to hell, it's about mapping. You begin to work hell in the laboratory, and then you begin to bring an understanding and say, when you hear sulfur and brimstone, then you can decompile the soul of man, how it's designed, and you can map it into what sulfur and brimstone is, and how eventually it maps into human beings. Then you begin to awaken people and say, actually, you're not going to hell. Hell is within you. You are the hell yourself. Your traumas and your fears is the solical dimension, and it maps into hell. That's what sons ought to be doing. But today, sons are praying that they should not go to hell. I hope I'm not extra. We still want you here tomorrow. Are we together? Everything that comes into perspective. When Yeshua comes into the scene, he contradicts a lot of things in the narrative in the way it was displayed. First of all, the same temptation that Yeshua is given, you realize it's the same temptation Adam had. But there's something that Yeshua speaks, he says, it's Paul who says that you are in the fear of death. So the issue is it about eating and dying, or the issue was the fear? The fear. So in other words, it's like the way the manifestation of the Christ comes, it reveals that actually fear is the one that has taken us captive. Fear is so powerful, it's the one that creates religion. People, they sit down, you see, the way normally people, they say, do not be vain in your imagination. The person that's telling you, do not be vain in your imagination, he's telling you what he knows, what being vain in imagination is. But there are many believers who are worshiping a God who is far less than they are. They are merciful to God, because you see the way believers repent. Oh Lord, I'm sorry. Because they're thinking about the things that are going in their minds, and they're like, if these thoughts come to God, He will dethrone him. So they fear for God. The only thing that, because you fear for this God, you cannot handle the vastness of your imagination, and because you're utilizing fear, so you begin to repent out of fear. Oh Lord, my imagination. Oh Lord, hey Lord, my thoughts. Oh Lord, please, I hope you didn't see how I thought. Because the way you're thinking, the way your thoughts fire is so vast beyond what God can handle. So it means it's the God of the creation of your mind, not the God that created you. And we need to begin to decompile that. Because if the seed or the emergence of sons will emerge, fear has to be stricken down. A lot of the things have to be recalibrated. The gates of access must be opened, assimilated, studied. They're not going to be given the kingdom by the masses. Territories are not given, territories are taken, including the realms of the spirit. So it means when the gates open, maybe I'll give particular kinds of my personal experience. Most of the times I rarely share those kinds of experiences. The ordinance that I received of apostleship was this. I was taken to heaven. It was like in a vision. I'm taken to heaven, but immediately I appeared. Nothing was happening. Then I was taken out, then taken to a realm. In this realm, I will see the gathering of the globe in terms of. Should I share that? That one, let it pass first. But one of the things that when I'm talking about, you have to make yourself approved. A lot of things that we face, even concerning resistance, in the realms of the spirit, they are not for your destruction, or they are not for your. It's not the way we interpret religiously about resistance. Resistance is for your good. Resistance is for your exercising. And resistance, as much as it's resistance, it is not resistance. Anytime you face resistance, it means you're not yet qualified to see what is behind the resistance. That's what you understand as a resistance. So resistance appears there. And people talk about Satan, and I'm like, you need to be wary of Elohim than Satan. Satan is child's play. Those other guys are much worse to deal with. So I remember one time I'm in that journey going to the throne, but I meet these three guys coming. And they withhold me. They withhold me in a particular place, and they resist my passage. And it was quite tough. And I see them. These are Elohim. The three guys are Elohim. And their stature, looking into them, they stand in righteousness, so their judgment is righteous. And they're the ones who deny me passage. But I'm standing before them, but I know I need to pass this level for me to meet the Father. I've been meeting the Father before and such, but somehow the construct this day is different. So it means it's about ushering you to the Father in a different dimension. So as they resist me, I remember the wisdom that was given me. I'll give you the human interpretation of utterance. The utterance in the human language, I said, I who is human, that I've been given power to repent, and I said some particular kind of things. When I said that, there's a particular light that came from behind them and passed by where they're standing, that light shone upon me. When that light shone upon me, the same who withstood me, they now bowed. Those things you don't say to Christians, isn't it? Now the same ones who withstood me that were supposed to worship, they now bowed and they're worshiping me. In other words, they supply their essence to fortify my being. So it means my stature rank has been changed, that assimilates, including their rank. So whenever I show up, then I'm not under them. They can no longer resist me, but then I can now deploy them. So you see how you perceive. What will a Christian do when they see resistance in the spirit? As the spirit wills. Isn't it? As the spirit. You let the spirit realm speak. I remember there's a particular point in time I'd given a particular prophecy. It was about the nation, political spectrum in the land. And when in the middle of the election, I'm waking up one morning, I see an angel standing there. And he tells me, that time the election was still on, the counting was going on, and he's telling me the opposition party is going to go to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will grant their requests. Then this prince was saying, will I have access into Nairobi? Now, first of all, the introduction was that I've been sent to you from the throne. I said, the word that you spoke, and this shall be. He said, this shall be. The opposition parties will go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will nullify the election and such. Then he said, will I have access? Because there was a portion to have access into Nairobi. So I held his hands and I said, this is what I told him. I told him, we as human beings were used to these disappointments. You see, nevertheless, my word shall stand. And you not only have access into Nairobi, I give you access into the entire Kenya. Take the report back to God. Then his countenance changed, and then he disappeared. So it happened, the opposition party went to the Supreme Court. That was which one? No, the Supreme Court did what? I said my word shall stand. There's two aspects. No, not the first one. Because I said my word shall stand, they could not nullify it. As such, it was the second phase now, and they're coming into power. The same revisitation of the matters happened. Eventually, political nullification happened. Then eventually, but you see, you'll be exercising things that are natural. Conversation between you and the divine. Don't be swift. Whenever you look at angelic visitation and conversation, at least apply your intelligence. You're being exercised. Sometimes speak contrary to what you're being told. You tell them, I will not take this report. And you have to measure yourself in a place of like looking at, when I'm speaking these kind of things, I'm speaking these things to open people into places of experiences, because we ought to find people, I believe with time, people begin to find identification in terms of the council they sit. We find those kinds of identification. We understand who your embodiment is, what is your experience with the Father, what exactly are you bringing, because each one of you ought to be an outpost that will begin to become a resource in this resource center. That eventually we understand the other dimensions of it. We'll come to a place, you can get into a place where in the place of how you're merged with God, there are particular things we don't invoke His name, we invoke your name. That's a part of the things. Because if we know there's a particular divinity aspect that is fully localized in an individual, we don't need to invoke the name of God. We understand now, so far in terms of the building, we have arrived to this point in time, and you have individuals that are embodiments of this outpost of heaven, and whenever we invoke their name, they're the representation. When we invoke your name, that particular thing, we now understand. Concerning this matter, we no longer pray again. We no longer seek God. We don't seek God, we seek you. I believe you're understanding. So we have a great journey in terms of where we're heading to. We have a great journey. It goes beyond practicing religion. Understand, utilize every moment of our interactions, or your interactions even in the world, to become an assimilation. Are you utilizing them to open the latches of your intelligence to plug into your Father in heaven? Because if you're not, you'll be captured by the chaos. You see, normally what I normally tell angels when they're telling me about things to do with heaven and whatever, I tell them, you live in heaven, isn't it? Yes. We live in a place where there are both angels and demons. So I tell them, what you're telling me is your gossip against these other guys. I will listen. Those are gossip, those are biases, angels and demons, those are biases. You live, angels, whatever, where demons live, they live, where angels live. We are living in the world where both angels and demons operate. So can an angel expect me to, as if this is heaven, where there are no demons, and be arrested by his bias and tantrums? So I tell them, no, we have to have balance, because after I've gone to heaven, I will remain here. You see, exercising ourselves to the degree that when we have matured, if we have found that our intelligence is synchronized with God, in that hour, He elevates you into the place of manifestation of sonship. Manifestation of sonship means now He deploys and His heart finds rest in you. He gives you your portion according to who you are, but at the same time, He is now free to self-unveil. That is a journey that you're on. That's a journey that you're on. If you don't see that journey, you'll be entrapped in the struggles. You'll be entrapped in the struggles of the discordances that happen in the human relationships and in our relationship with God. We may try. People talk about revivals, died, or whatever. You see, humanity is very strange because we have a way of psychologically and aesthetically curing our problems, our deficiencies. If we start a revival and it dies, we say the Lord intended it to die. Even prophets follow it up and they affirm the Lord intended this revival to die. And I'm telling you that is a lie. The aspects of revival, it is supposed to be handing over one revival to a greater one of impacts and explosions. Anytime you see a revival die, it means the strategies of interception have managed to eventually catch up and to strangle that revival. That's the story. Paul writes and says, we do not war against flesh and blood, against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. It says, the ranks of these kinds of cadres, it means you must tackle them into different strategies. The way you deal with principalities is not the same way you deal with powers. It's not the same way you deal with rulers of darkness. It's not the same way you deal with spiritual wickedness in high places. It means there's a dimension where the battles are battles of wisdoms. The battles of outwits. I'll show you one time. One time in a council in heaven, there's somebody, it was actually a student that came. It was a student that came to my house and they were asking me they wanted to access the realm of science. So in that point in time, I'm taken to a council in heaven and Paul asked to come because the spirit of science was accusing the church. And I was seeing the demarcation where science left the church. So in that place, I'm sitting in the council in heaven, and there's this formation that has to come in place, and the spirit of science, where it departed from the church, comes to make a kind of an insurrection regarding why science cannot partner with church, because behind it means there's a prince, isn't it? And at that point in time, I came face to face with realities that shook the entire understanding of the philosophical gospel that's been preached. Then I could understand even the interception started with the early church. For instance, I'll show you this. How do you start by prison doors breaking, then you end up in the same prison and being killed? So for us, we will say, we will anesthetically cure ourselves and say, the Lord wills, it's persecution, you see, we will die. And then we change our gospel. So the gospel began to be preached to people. You receive the gospel to die for Jesus. You know, if you forsake his life, whatever. So people are being born of God, born again to die. They're choosing death. So the gospel began changing from the invasion to having this heavy choice to choose God even against your life. Yet what God brought, he brought an inducement of a civilization that's supposed to superimpose over the civilization that be. It means now, if the church understood the craft and the ropes of how spirituality works, that angel that came to break the door, when God initiates something by the sovereign act, he expects to follow it and institute it by your authority. So when they are praying in that place of deficiency, in his sovereign act, he sends an angel to break the prison doors. From that point in time, he expects that you ground that angel in the natural realm, and it comes from that day, he says, now, there's a practitioner, a saint, whom we know, this is our prison breaker. From today, no saint will be held in prison. So the governments will be concerned. When they arrest you, they find out, are you a believer? We don't want infrastructural damage. So it will be a narrative to say, you arrest any saint, the prisons will break. They have a spirit that they deploy upon prisons, so their own cannot be arrested. That alone pivots a lot of narrative. It pivots argument, it pivots. But now, let me fast track now. Go back in terms of that council. Then I was taken now, I began seeing what was happening in the early church. I thought prophecy was that you're prophesying the future. But in that section, I could see that prophecy was that you have received supernatural knowledge without human intervention. That by knowledge, you've tapped into a knowledge that without human intervention. Then I was taken into the early church. When the apostles preached the gospel, how it was being proclaimed, now when people speak about Yeshua has come, he died on the cross, he resurrected, and went into heaven, how that maps into you, it doesn't map to you in the same way an apostle carries it as a witness. It is the same way it's proclaimed to say, Juliet, Jesus Christ died on the cross and he paid for your sins, whatever. How it interprets to you, it is a wow moment of saying, oh, now I'm given power to exercise medicine the way I was supposed to. That's how it self-interprets. So what happened to the church was, whenever they would gather for fellowship, everyone would prophesy. Then people began emerging in the church to say, while I was praying, I was shown that a time is coming when you're not going to use horsebacks, you're going to use locomotives, automobiles. That began to become prophecy among fellowship. The apostles were uncomfortable. Another one says, oh, as this one was speaking, I had the same kind of encounter, but mine, I was shown this tree, and I was shown the elements upon it for medicine. Another one says, I was shown this and that. Now it began touching the scientific plane. The apostles will not take it. This is not prophecy. And Paul himself writes even in scripture and says, he casts them out. He says, those that argue science so-called. Have you ever seen that kind of thing in the Bible? Those that argue science so-called. Why would they argue science in church? Other than claiming they have experienced God scientifically. And they were banished from the church. So it means the church cast out the apostles of civilization. And that's how the spirit of science departed from the church. So you begin to understand, when you speak about rectifications, we ought to touch, including the plagues that touched the early church. Unless we fix those things, the gospel is not relevant. Christians believe there are 1 billion Chinese around the world who have refused to receive Jesus, and God is just producing a population of 1 billion as firewood for hell. Huh? In this world where a man can just look at a woman and persuade a woman until you marry a woman, you convince a woman and you marry her, a woman who was born from a place you don't know, whatever, you can convince a woman and marry her. God who created the people, he has no language to persuade the people, and he's the one who has even the patent of how they think, yet he cannot manage. Are we talking? God is the one who created all people, isn't it? He's the one that knows the art of even how they think. Yet the same God has no ability to convince a Chinese. The only thing he reacts to a Chinese with tantrum. You refused me, now you're going to go to hell. You will burn, you will see. Just wait. So sometimes we look at these things we're watching. We are watching and say, oh, this is God. And you see, we balkanize us, and then we begin to feel, then we care. Another thing introduced to us, we are the remnants. Oh, remnants is a nice thing. So you feel it. Oh, we are the remnants. Brothers, put foolishness down. The responsibility is upon us. Are we together? The responsibility is upon us. If you're going to change, I'm persuaded if my word for Kenya normally is, I know God has a calling for Kenya. And the template of the blueprint of what we're supposed to produce has nothing to do with the historical data. It is something of a people that must come up and begin to teach something that has not been seen from the world. My persuasion is, if we successfully activate what is supposed to be, people are supposed to stop ministry and say, let us travel into Kenya. And my prayer is that we'll be the ones that will awaken that thing. Say, let's first of all stop ministry. There's something happening there. Let us go and learn. We thought we knew ministry. We thought we knew God. But there's a language happening somewhere. Don't you prove it? Have I not spoken? Brothers and sisters, have you ever had this language in church? Which church? Globally. Tell me one. That you've heard things that I've spoken here today.
Arkham Asylum.
So technically it means if Kenya boasts, prophetically God has told us to have revival, or which one? There must be a language. There must be a language that people will say these people have faced God. And they have labored with God, and they have grounded God, and they're ready to deploy God. So the main thing is, do not be stagnant. Don't be just going through the motions. Hearing of, we are gathering, then we are going to a gathering of a kind of a people, yet there's nothing translating within you. There's no economy within you that is drawing that empire. My prayer is that we take the shortest time possible to create a tower that rises and sanctions, because particular kind of things you realize it must attain to a particular kind of a quorum for you to move a motion, even in the spirit, isn't it? So it means the particular kind of quorum that a number of people must attain unto for a particular motion to be moved. And say, now God to entrust us. So it means there is a lot in terms of stature, there's a lot in terms of developing ourselves, there's a lot in terms of your evolution from within. You must look at the solical traumas of your development, tackle them, evolve, become that light. Some of you ought to experience a monk aspect where we just meet you and we see just your divine presence. So when you say, I am the presence of God, people say, we can see it. You are the presence of God. We need that. We need to build an edifice. When we're able to fix that, it will sanction, whether it's resources, whether it's power. Let me tell you this. I've seen stuff that I tell people, it's not an issue of how much has happened. The empire has stuff that it can compensate for us the thousands of years that have gone. There's a dimension I've seen that even if it's about territories of the world, part of my things that I want to deal with is to come to war with America. When I'm talking war, I'm speaking about military war. Castile supports me on that normally. But you see, the point of coming to war with America is not about coming to war with America. It's to make a point of a sound. Because war, the way you talk about war, is different from the spiritual realm. War in the spiritual realm is conversations. We are in argument, so we are not agreeing. So technically, if you come to war with America and defeat America, means the tower upon the wall, you are the sound. But let me tell you this, as mystics. To war with the powers that be in this world, as mystics, you don't need missiles. You may be developing the weaponry, the intelligence when they seek, if you have any artillery, they won't find it. But what they fail to understand is, as you're developing yourself, even soil and dust is onboarding. So a day you announce war, they look at your military artillery, and the only thing is that you have your hands. When they say, where is your missiles? Where is your radar? You see, when they rise with their missiles and start, they realize you're fighting with the cloud, the earth, the wind, the stars, which can arrest their missiles. They can do all whatever things. In that hour, now you say, now you stop and listen. Preaching the gospel is not very hard. We love talking too much. Some of these things that people love, a Christian is caught up in Iran, is being tortured to death. These things that we read in the Bible, are they myths? Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. We just need somebody to be launched into Iran, first of all by teleportation, so they look at the entry points. There's no records in the immigration of how you got into the country. Then they arrest you, and you have the backup of other mystics in Nairobi. We say we are on an assignment. While they're arresting you, we are announcing and say, he's setting a table before us in the presence of our enemies. You see, now these things begin to become reality because we know what you're going to do. Because we want CNN, Al Jazeera to broadcast your execution. And maybe we induce us and say, we'll make them decide and say, you claim you believe in the God of the Bible, so use the same furnace. So while the entire world is watching, one of us is going to be set into the furnace so as to send a point to the believers that never preach the gospel here. And you walk into the fire and the fire says, oh, we know you by name, you have arrived. While the entire world, that is free airtime. CNN, Al Jazeera, whatever. Then whatever you say, let me tell you something. Whatever you say from that fire, it will be the gospel to every living room in the world. I'm telling you the truth. Whatever you will say from that fire, while they're passing a point. So we love talking too much. There's more artillery for the kingdom than what has been deployed. I'm painting a picture so that this thing may begin to open up in the temple of your being. There's so much vastness. I'm beginning to feel a lot of saturation and my hands are feeling like they will burst. I think from that point I'll finish at that point. But I hope I've inspired you. As you're taking off, let us focus on the goal. of this mandate. Let us be diligent, let us be vicious, be brutal even on yourself until you attain. And I believe the kingdom will release a lot of resources in terms of the virtues. There's a category of angels that people normally talk less about, but I normally try to admonish people to think about them. They're called the angels, they're called virtues. They rarely are talked about, but it's very powerful. Virtues control a lot of things. Virtues is a sound that can take form. If you can manage to tap into that realm of virtues, you can control a lot of resourcefulness, then draw it and begin to deploy. Isn't it? Yeah. Virtues, when you look at from the Christian perspective, is the 9 choirs of the angelic. The top 3 is normally the seraphims, cherubims, and thrones, isn't it? And you realize, when you look at 3 by 3, the center one controls that realm. So whenever you hear about the throne, you realize the cherubims control the concept of the throne. When you come to the second layer is above it is what is called? Below thrones is powers. There's powers, virtues, and then principalities, something like that, isn't it? Isn't it? Principalities in the lower one, no? There's archangel, above archangels is principality, and then below archangels is angels. Principalities control that, isn't it? So you realize when you're able to touch virtues, you can touch the highest and you can touch the lowest. Virtues controls that, isn't it? Virtue is very powerful. It means you can be very foolish and ignorant, but because of virtues, you can find interpretation. It's a nicer way of a dumb person to be as wise. Because of virtues. Yeah. So God bless you. My praise as we set off. We are here on Thursday for prayers, and we could begin to feel that descent and the gelling between us and the Father's house, and finding recognition as we keep gelling. You realize it means, so you're bringing your angels. So it means there's a particular formation that begins to find recalibration based on the people that come in this place. So God bless you. Looking forward to a great experience as we go forward, and the inspiration, and to see people become entities and outposts of the empire who are full functionaries with God that can fully express that He may say they are gods walking upon the earth. Let us be brace up and walk unapologetically, while at the same time possessing love, so that we may be able to expand, being very strategic to know how can we be able to penetrate realms that have not been penetrated. Not for us to control, but for us to awaken. Our main mandate is what is called manifesting the divine nature. It means taking what is legally yours, bringing you to a legality in the place in God without robbing you of your essence. I believe the same thing that Apostle Nelson holds. So God bless you. Now to you.
Awesome.